All right, let's talk about Louisiana. It's a place that, on paper, should be an absolute powerhouse, but it's not. Today, we're going to dive into this very paradox, why a state with so many natural advantages is, well, collapsing.
I mean, just look at a map. Louisiana controls the mouth of the Mississippi River. That's the main economic highway for almost all of North America. It should be the New York of the South, a total economic giant. But it's not. The reality is the complete opposite. So what happened? How does arguably the most valuable piece of real estate on the continent end up falling so far behind?
So you've got this wild contrast, right? On one hand, you have this incredible geographic gift. It's literally a funnel for the entire continent. But on the other side of the ledger, the reality is pretty grim. We're talking about sinking land, an economy that's just not growing, people leaving the state, and rankings that put it near the very bottom for things like opportunity and infrastructure. And that gap, that's the core of what we're looking at today. Okay, so to really get this, we have to start at the very beginning. And I mean that literally. We have to start with the ground itself. The first piece of this puzzle is all about the geology of southern Louisiana. And it all comes down to the Mississippi River, which, as you'll see, has been both its greatest creator and its greatest curse.
You see, southern Louisiana isn't built on solid rock. It's basically one gigantic river delta. For about, 7,000 years, the Mississippi has been carrying all this stuff, mud, sand, clay, all the way from the middle of the continent down to the Gulf of Mexico. When the river finally hits the Gulf, it slows down, and all that sediment just drops. It settles, layer after layer, and that's what created the land itself.
So the best way to picture this is to forget about solid ground. Think of it like a huge, wet sponge. Seriously, there's no bedrock underneath, it's just thousands of feet of muck. If you've ever been to New Orleans and see a construction site, you'll notice it fills with water almost instantly. And you can imagine trying to build a modern, heavy state on top of a wet sponge. Well, that's a huge problem from day one. Now, for thousands of years, nature had this all figured out. It had a perfect system. The river would carry the sediment down, deposit it to build new land, and then, crucially, the annual floods would come and spread a fresh layer of mud over everything. This was the magic ingredient that kept the land from sinking. It was this beautiful, elegant, self-repairing cycle. And then we came along and broke it. So how did we break it? Well, we decided we had to tame the wild river. We tried to control a force of nature that, frankly, has a mind of its own.
You know, it's easy to look at a river on a map and think of it as just a blue line, like a pipeline. But that's not what they are at all. Rivers are living, writhing, serpentine things. And the Mississippi is the king of them. It is always moving, always shifting. And that constant desire to change is really the central conflict at the heart of Louisiana's story.
And this is where we get to the ticking time bomb. See, as a river like the Mississippi builds out its delta, the path it takes to the sea gets longer and slower. It's inefficient. So like clockwork, about once every 1,000 years or so, the river says enough of this, and it just jumps. It finds a new, shorter, steeper shortcut to the Gulf. And the thing is, it's way, way overdue to do it again, right now. So where does it want to go? Well, the river is just itching to abandon its current route past New Orleans. It wants to jump west and take a shortcut down what's called the Atchafalaya River. And why wouldn't it? That path is 150 miles shorter and a whole lot steeper. It's just easier. If we let nature take its course, the main flow of the Mississippi River would completely bypass Baton Rouge and New Orleans. They'd be left on a saltwater bayou. And believe me, people have known how important this spot is for a long, long time. The great powers of the world played hot potato with it. In just a handful of decades, it went from France to Spain, back to Napoleon's France, and then boom, the Louisiana Purchase sold to the United States. Everyone got it. Control this one spot, and you control the commerce of an entire continent. So, in 1718, they founded New Orleans. Strategically, brilliant. As a place to actually live, absolutely horrible. It was a swamp, a mosquito-infested place people called a wet grave. The only reason the city survived at all was because of the brutal, forced labor of enslaved Africans. And we're not just talking about farming. They were the civil engineers who built the very first levees by hand and drained the land that the city stands on. Okay, so the geography is incredibly challenging, but the politics became an absolute disaster. And you really can't understand modern Louisiana and its deep-seated problems without talking about one person, a man who still casts an enormous shadow over the state, Huey P. Long. His slogan was "Every man a king." That was Huey the Kingfish Long. He came to power in the 1930s with this incredibly powerful populist message. He promised to finally help the poor, rural folks who had been totally ignored by the rich planters and oil barons. And you know what? He actually did a lot of what he promised.
Just look at the balance sheet. On the good side, he delivered real, tangible progress. We're talking thousands of miles of paved roads, free bridges, charity hospitals. He gave free textbooks to school kids and made Standard Oil pay for it. But the price for all that progress was democracy itself. He effectively destroyed it. He had absolute power over the courts, the police, the legislature. Louisiana basically became his personal kingdom.
And that's where the long-term damage comes in. It was huge. He created a political culture where corruption wasn't just common, it was the way things worked. It was the operating system. And what does that do? Well, legitimate businesses, the kind that innovate and create good jobs, they stayed away. I mean, why would you invest your money in a place where you have to bribe a dozen different people just to get a permit? It created this self-perpetuating cycle of cronyism that has choked the life out of the state's economy for generations.
So you take that fragile, sinking geography and you combine it with that broken, corrupt political culture, and what you get are the cascading crises Louisiana is dealing with right now.
Let's zoom in on New Orleans. For the city to grow, they had to drain the swamps all around it. But here's the trap. When you pump the water out of that spongy Louisiana muck, the land itself compacts and sinks. It's a cruel irony. The very act of building the city caused it to sink deeper and deeper into a bowl. Right now, about half of New Orleans is below sea level. Think about that. It makes the city one of the most vulnerable places on Earth.
And then there's the oil. Finding massive oil and gas reserves sounds like winning the lottery, right? But for Louisiana, it became what economists call a resource curse. The state got hooked on the easy money from oil and gas, so it never really bothered to build a modern, diverse economy. The result? You get things like Cancer Alley, that 85-mile stretch packed with petrochemical plants. You get a brain drain, where all the educated young people leave because the good jobs are somewhere else in a cleaner environment. And somehow, it gets worse. All of these problems are unfolding while the state is literally physically disappearing from the map. To really grasp how fast this is happening, I want you to picture a football field in your mind.
An entire football field of land washes away into the ocean every 100 minutes. See, the very levees we built to stop the floods are also stopping the river from dropping that precious mud that builds and maintains the land. The delta is being starved, and so it's sinking into the Gulf at a terrifying speed.
And this right here, this is the only thing standing between the status quo and an unimaginable economic catastrophe. It's called the Old River Control Structure. It's a gigantic concrete and steel fortress that is physically forcing the Mississippi River to stay on its current path, completely against its natural will. It might just be the single most important piece of infrastructure in America that you've never heard of. And here's the scary part. It almost collapsed during a flood back in 1973.
Which brings us back to where we started, but with a new question. Think about it. Louisiana serves the rest of the country. It's a funnel for our goods, it processes a huge amount of our energy, it's a shield that takes the hit from hurricanes, and it drains the water from half the country. And what does it get in return? Its land is disappearing, its economy is broken, and it's locked in this constant, desperate fight against a river we're holding hostage. So when you look at all that, you have to wonder, did Louisiana fail? Or, for the good of the nation, was it sacrificed?